So as Ron mentioned, we invited award recipients to volunteer to share brief "This I Believe" statements reflecting on a core belief that either shaped or was shaped by their community engagement. And we're delighted that Alfredo Oliveira, Grace Nelson, and Nicole Egnett-Fahn were willing to speak. Please join me in welcoming Alfredo to the podium.
It feels like yesterday that I stepped out of the airplane to spend our year abroad in Minnesota. For me, at that time, it was the land of the unknown, but I was ecstatic to leave Brazil for something new. I had told my mom that all I needed was a year abroad. I wanted to experience what I had seen in the movies. Minnesota turned out to be very different from California or New York. But after all, it was the United States of America, the land of opportunities. I was raised by a single mother until I was 13 years old, and she worked multiple jobs to pay the bills and put me through school. She never went to college, and my father was never present. When I was 11 years old, my mom lost her job. In order to be able to stay in school, I started working part-time at the school's media center. In exchange, I received $500 of scholarship for that semester. It was not easy being the only one working in the afternoon while my friends got together. However, I knew that in order to be something and someone in life, I would have to stay focused. There are moments when I wanted to give up, especially when things got worse at home. My uncle was abusive, and at school I was often bullied. My family didn't have a lot of money compared to my friends. I stuck out as the one who didn't have the new things. But now I look back, I know that why material possessions didn't and still don't mean anything to me. What I lacked in money, I made up for in education. And that's one thing that no one can ever take away from me. Over the years, I've heard a lot of no's. I can remember my high school counselor saying that I could not apply for college in the USA. However, I was committed to make my dream come true, and with the help of mentors and friends, filled with my passion for education, I went to St. Cloud Technical and Community College, where I earned 2 degrees, and then St. Cloud State University, where I'm currently enrolled in the Higher Education Administration Master's Program. Along the way, I have been blessed with professors, administrators, and other mentors like Dr. Ember, who is here today, who provided me with opportunities to excel. This is what I believe. I believe that everyone has the power to make their dreams come true. My dream was to get an American education. But more than that, I'm proud to say that I have been taking every opportunity to augment my education with experiential learning. I was appointed to the Board of Trustees for the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities system in 2010, and reappointed by Governor Dayton in 2012. I have completed 2 internships in Washington, D.C., one at the Human Rights Campaign last summer, and in 2013 in the office of Senator Al Franken. For me, not even the sky is the limit, and whatever I set myself to do, I will try it once, twice, and maybe 3 times. There will always be goals in my life, and I might not know the answer of how I'll get there, but I believe I'll find a way, and dreams do come true. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Grace. Yes, so a lot of beautiful people out there, more than I was thinking, but this is going to be wonderful, so let's work together. All right, so I wanted to start out by sharing a few words from Australian Aboriginal Elder Lila Watson. I stumbled across her words my sophomore year of college and found her simple articulation to just beautifully envelop what I've come to view service and community engagement in my own life. So this is what she says. If you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. If you have come because your liberation is bound up in mine, then let us work together. For me, these words encompass the unwavering power of solidarity, something that is deeply rooted in every community, yet sometimes longs to be recognized. Community engagement is all about uncovering that solidarity, and furthermore, discovering the differences and connections that exist between us all. Solidarity is more so a mutual discovery of the other. At the University of St. Thomas, I have had a wonderful opportunity to become involved with a program called Vision. Through this program, I have now led 4 service trips, both internationally and nationally, and like these include various sites. Like I've been to Montana, New Mexico, 2 different sites there, and Guatemala. And this experience has by far been one of the most enriching experiences I've had in my 4 years at St. Thomas. The first trip I ever led was to San Lucas Toliman, Guatemala. When we arrived, I saw a world that was new to me. I had seen poverty before, but not to this extent. I sensed my privilege in the world that I lived and breathed in, and I sensed that perhaps my breath in the world was all too comfortable for its small significance and existence. I remember one day that I got back from a morning project when I was in Guatemala, and I decided to walk back and explore the kitchen a little bit, because like they have like this system of like giving people, like they already have food ready for you when you get back from your research project. So I got back early and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna see what's happening back here. This is gonna be fun. So I went back and I met these 2 women named Marcela and Dora. And these women were just beautiful. They had their traditional Mayan wear, their pipiles and their cortes, which is their shirts and skirts. And it was just really wonderful to like see them back there. They always made tortillas for every meal, and like they always just miraculously showed up. And I was like, well, how did this happen? Like, what's going on here? And so watching them just start from scratch, and they pat the tortillas, just like the beautiful rhythm of them just patting, and it's just a rhythm of their culture. That's what it expressed. And I just remember being like, walking back there, I was like, can you teach me how to do this? And they made it look so much easier than it actually is. Like I was like whipping that thing all over the place. There's like tortillas flying. And they're just like sitting there like, oh, perfect round little circles. And it's wonderful tortilla that they make 100 for my one. And so I just remember in that exchange, I was talking with them, and their first language is actually Cachical, which is the native language there, and Spanish is their second language. So I was speaking with them in Spanish, and then I was like, hey, can you teach me some words in Cachical? And so while I was like, just making a fool of myself, trying to make these tortillas, and also learning Cachical, like trying to say os, which means good, and mashtios, which is thank you, and those are the only 2 things I remember, so it's not difficult. But I remember just like sitting in that moment, and they're giggling at my like little attempts of like being incapable of making tortillas, perfectly round tortillas, and trying to pronounce new words that I'd never tried to pronounce before. And I realized in that memory that it's not actually about the material stove that I built the day before at a service project, or the coffee beans that I picked that morning at my service project. Like those things matter, but it's only temporary. I learned that relationship building and cross-cultural understanding and a craving to learn from one another is the crux of service and community engagement. Through this experience and other vision trips that I've had, I've expanded my understanding of what love can embody and discovered that service is much more than it appears to be on the surface of the word. It is a mutual understanding and a recognition of another people, whoever that may be. It is solidarity. I believe Miss Watson, who I referenced in the beginning, recognizes a certain truth that comes from the interconnectedness I so pertinently encountered with Marcela and Dora while making those tortillas and exchanging language. She acknowledges the profound idea that if we are willing to make a step outside of ourselves and aspire to understand each other more fully as a community, we may bind our liberation together and open up a world of possibilities in a walk together. Thank you.
My name is Nicole Tenapong, and I believe in shared power. This past fall in late September, there were approximately 7 full buses leaving from Minnesota to New York City for People's Climate March, which was speculated and envisioned to be the largest climate march in history. Marching, laughing, chanting and singing next to hundreds of people, many of which I did not know, and all of us together created the 400,000 plus people that made People's Climate March indeed the largest climate march in history to date. This experience rocked me to my core and gave me a glimpse at what shared power could look like. Fuels, invest in our future. My role leading up to the march was to recruit others to go and be a part of the making of history. I started in 2 places. Where I am now, in the St. Peter community, and Gustavus Adolphus College, where I'm deeply committed to the fossil-free divestment campaign, and where I'm rooted, which is my hometown of Worthington, Minnesota, where I recently created and facilitated a youth program called Be the Change Leadership on Purpose. The Fossil-Free Divestment Campaign is a national movement aimed at divesting our educational institution endowments from fossil fuels and reinvesting in socially responsible and environmentally sustainable ways. Be the Change Leadership on Purpose is focused on exploring topics of identity and social and environmental justice as means to cultivating holistic leadership among students of color in Southwest Minnesota. Both of these places in my life are focusing on striving towards a better future and creating spaces along the way to sustain that. I believe in shared power as a principle and practice. It led me to community organizing and has sustained my own long-term commitment to justice and collective change. Working for justice means building power together in order to create large-scale change that will affect the root causes of needs that we see. I've never felt so deeply empowered to show up with my background as a 21-year-old, able-bodied, Thai, Chinese, Laotian woman, first-generation college student from a working-class background. I believe to truly gain shared power, we need slow, intentional time for deep movement building. From our early years, we've been conditioned to prioritize multitasking and constant doing as measures of our fundamental self-worth. So many social norms, work, and school climates keep us all invested in these fast-paced lifestyles. We need the kind of slow time in this constant transition into a just, fair, and resilient world. The kind of slow time that's needed for healing. Because change is not just about the end result we get. It's not just what we do, but it's how we do it. What did fellow divestment organizers from Gustavus Adolphus College share with high school students from Worthington and every other single person on those buses? A belief in shared power, and a firm belief that coming together, even among our complex, intricate differences, is the only way we can begin to build shared power. We live in a world of differences, and working for collective shared power and justice is complex, but it cannot be an excuse. Just because things are hard doesn't mean it's not important. Part of doing the work is questioning why it's so hard or tough. Working for justice is not a one-time volunteer experience. It's committing to the long haul because we need long-term solutions. At the core, each of us has a voice and power from within. Gustavus students, Worthington High School students, those of us who were led into this room for some reason. There's greater collective power in finding the intersections of our voices, who we are, the identities that we hold, aligning our different impacts, and being together, and actively doing the work every day. This is what will sustain us in striving towards a life of collective shared power. True power of the people. Thank you.
One of these students has agreed to speak. Awali Osman is graduating from Oxford College, but previously attended North Hennepin Community College, and next year will be starting graduate school at Minnesota State University, so Mankato. So I just mentioned that he's connected to multiple member institutions. And please join me in welcoming him back to the...
My education journey began when I enrolled in North Hennepin Community College as a post-secondary enrollment option student during my senior year in high school. At the time, I could not have envisioned how higher education would shape my life. During my third semester at North Hennepin, I enrolled in my first night class. I arrived 5 minutes late and stealthily sat at the only available seat in the front row. As I sat down, I gazed towards the podium where an African-American gentleman silently stood. He looked about 30 years old, and from my experiences, this was an average age for students in night classes. I thought, what is that student doing at the podium, and why is the instructor late to the first day of class? 5 minutes later, I learned that student was Dr. Keith Mays, the instructor for the class. Dr. Mays was my first teacher of color. For the first time, I realized that at a subconscious level, I was making assumptions about who my teachers are. I live in a society where I am the minority, so I notice it as a person from the outside when I am among the dominant culture. As a young person, having that experience was transformational and essential to my decision to pursue graduate training that culminates in a doctorate of philosophy in intercultural communication studies. In that regard, I believe I am called to build the capacity through higher education. I never thought I would aspire to become a professor because I thought I was not smart or intelligent enough. North Hennepin Community College and Augsburg College helped me develop the self-efficacy to accomplish my academic and career goals. I now exercise agency by creating communities of support for students who are also marginalized and alone. For example, at Augsburg, I work with the Minnesota Urban Debate League, a local nonprofit that trains middle and high school students through competitive academic debate to become engaged learners, critical thinkers, and active citizens who are effective advocates for themselves and their communities. Not only do I work to enhance students' debate skills as a judge, but I also help Minnesota UDL's Somali Debate Pilot and the Spanish Debate Tournament. I'm involved in these programs because I want to help underserved students know that they have a voice, and I want to show them how to find it. I also have to ensure I develop my voice as well, so I can advocate for the students I serve. Ultimately, I want to give back to my several communities and affect change. Thank you, North Hennepin Community College, Augsburg College, and Minnesota Urban Debate League.
We have two This I Believe speakers from this community partner group. Juan Cervantes is the first Hispanic State Farm agent in Minnesota and the vice president of the East Side Area Business Association in St. Paul. And Sue Martell is the placement specialist with Volunteer Connection in the Bloomington Public Schools Pond Center. Please join me in welcoming Juan and then Sue.
Good afternoon. Hope everyone is enjoying themselves at this great award ceremony. As Julie mentioned, there's been some firsts in our history with our family. But it's difficult to kind of encapsulate a life, a belief system with the number of years of experience that I've had. But this I do believe, that an overriding component is that in order to cross the bridge of opportunity to success, it's never done alone. Born and raised as a St. Paulite in the 60s, there were many challenges Latinos faced. Understanding that period's social norms and accepted customs for that time helped create a framework of adaptation and survival. Those who are familiar with that period will understand that. This, I believe, that the challenges I faced are what defined and made me stronger. When an immigrant widow with 7 children puts her faith in family, church, and those in public service, which results in all 7 of her children graduating from McAllister College, which is a first in McAllister's history, and 5 of the 7 have master's or doctorate degrees. This, I believe, I never operated in isolation. After graduating from McAllister, I worked for Clues. At that time, it was the first bilingual Spanish-speaking mental health outpatient service center in the Twin Cities. Of the 5 employees, I was their community liaison. I provided grant writing, advocacy, direct service using a network of nonprofit organizations. Today is the state's largest bilingual, bicultural mental health organization providing service in a bilingual setting. This, I believe, that there is strength in numbers. As the first Latino State Farm agent in Minnesota, I had not placed a great deal of importance to that fact, but was more interested in providing in-language service to my customers. Having worked with a couple of great insurance companies on the corporate side since 1988, and I started that when I was 15. So I chose to start my agency in 2003 And I remember growing up, going down to Ramsey County Human Services as a child and acting as a pseudo-translator for my mother because at that time, bilingual staff was not as commonplace as it is today. This experience stuck with me. When you rely on the translative services of a 7 or 8-year-old to get services, there's something wrong with that picture. I've operated a trilingual agency from inception. We speak English, Spanish, and Hmong. We provide insurance and financial service in the preferred language of the customer, thereby ensuring that their understanding of what they're buying and why they're buying it. So when those among us can share in their success with others, taking the time and developing our next generation of community leaders, educators, business professionals, we can then enjoy the fruits of our own labor. As we gather today, I represent ASABA, the Eastside Area Business Association, for which I'm a board member. I strive to contribute wherever I can, when I can. The relationship that ASABA has with Metro State is not so unique, but very organic. We came together in a natural attraction to mutually support our respective efforts in education and in business. We are very proud and delighted at our initial success for our placement of interns through our ASABA network of members. I can only foresee continued success and improvements as we move forward. This, I believe, our work is never really done. But through partnerships like Metro and ASABA, we can assist those in crossing that bridge of opportunity, knowing that we had a hand in their success. Thank you.
My name is Sue Martell, and I'm the Volunteer Placement Coordinator for Bloomington Schools. I'd like to thank you for this award and thank Normandale College for awarding it to us. I want to make a difference. As a coordinator of academic volunteers for Bloomington Schools, I often hear this request, but it's rarely spoken. They'll come to me and say, well, I'd like to read to kids, or I'd like to help students increase their English language, or maybe learn more knowledge about math. I believe we all want to make a difference, the difference we may make may have much more impact than we had planned. I met an elderly man who had recently lost his wife, and he decided that, he'd like to volunteer with kids. So the first grade classroom that he was placed in welcomed him, and the students called him Grandpa Mac. Well, you didn't mess with Grandpa Mac. He was 90 years old, and he said one day to me, and forcefully put his hand on the table and said, "These kids saved my life." By sharing his time, his life had improved, and it made a difference. I met a college freshman who needed service learning hours, so he chose to assist in a sixth grade reading class. He shared his time each week and developed relationships with these, often challenging middle school students. Well, when he walked in the classroom each week, the students would cheer. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never had a job, well, maybe at Normandale. I've never had a job where they cheer when I walk into the room. There's very few times in our life where that'll happen. Well, to these kids, he was a rock star. So this young student, he felt really good about going there. His self-esteem raised. And you know what? He made a difference. Last spring, 2 young students arrived from China in our school district. The elementary school administrator asked if I knew anyone who spoke Mandarin and who could volunteer with these students. Well, I contacted my wonderful resource, Normandale Community College, and a student from China who said, "Oh, I have a friend from Taiwan," enthusiastically offered to help these girls a couple times a week. Now, these young students were able to thrive in their new surroundings due to the generosity of these college students, and it made a difference. My job is to provide academic support for Bloomington students, but we accomplish so much more. The senior citizen needing a purpose, the college student finding their path, being the role model to an elementary student who never knew anyone who went to college. the student who finally learned how to add fractions because of a college student who volunteered at the Homework Connection each week. When I asked how long he would continue volunteering, he said, "Well, I can't quit until these kids move to middle school." These stories are not about me, but my life has been enriched as I believe by creating these partnerships, my community may be stronger, and this next generation will see the value of sharing their time and know firsthand that we all really do and can make a difference. Thank you.
Wow, I am truly humbled by all of the wonderful stories I've heard today of what people believe in. And I guess I get to tell you a little bit about me. I believe in empowering others to serve within their communities. I haven't had a lot of struggles in terms of being able to accomplish what I believe in. I'm currently being recognized primarily for a program that I started within my college for the students that take a course with me, and that they can practice their skills that are really learned to a group of people that really need some healthcare type assistance. So it's kind of a win-win situation situation for them in terms of being able to interact with others and hopefully carry on the thought that they may want to serve in the community in the future. I think by the time, or one of my most memorable things to share about serving was probably when I was about 12 or 13. And I don't remember the mechanics of why this actually got put together, but a couple of us, a young woman, would go to a woman's home about 2 or 3 days a week after school. So we were like in 7th or 8th grade. And we'd spend some time with this woman who was wheelchair bound. She had multiple sclerosis, so she really didn't have use of her body from the neck down. And we were there to provide some range of motion exercises, which were basically trying to keep her arms a little limber instead of contracted. But we spent a good 2 hours there in the afternoon. She actually taught us how to oil paint in return for us providing the service for her. And what was really earth-shattering to me at the time was she would teach us how to paint by holding that paintbrush in between her teeth. It was years later that I really realized what we were doing was just giving companionship. Again, I don't remember the mechanics of doing, but it was kind of the start of something that I was brought up doing, and that was always to serve others. So that's what I hope to impart to my students, and that's what I really get very excited about doing. When I see that recognition in them after they have provided service, in this case at a community food shelf in Burnsville, where they've practiced their skills or just sat and held someone's hand or listened to their story or packed their cars full of groceries or whatever it was. But what's particularly thrilling to me is when that student comes back to me and says, you know, they explain what they have gotten out of that experience and that they want to continue doing it. So I feel like just setting that example is something that I believe is important to do with whoever we're with, so that they will continue to serve in the future in whatever area they would like to devote themselves to. So thank you for this award. I feel very humbled in receiving it. I just feel like there's so many more accomplishments that are out there that are more deserving. So thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Paul Jackson. I teach in chemistry and environmental studies at St. Olaf. It's always a challenge when you give a faculty member a microphone because we love to talk. And I am the last thing ahead of other things on the agenda, so I'll keep these brief. Theory guides and experiment decides. This statement, first espoused by Isaac Kolthoff not too far down the road, serves as the often cited motto of the subdiscipline analytical chemistry, one of which I belong. It complements 2 goals of the scientific process: discovery, the generation of ideas and new knowledge, and reduction to practice, that is the application of that knowledge and ideas. Often discovery gets a majority of the attention, but it is the reduction to practice that excites me. It speaks to the consequences, intended and unintended, of the discovery. In addition, it reinforces that learning is intimately connected to knowledge construction and to experience. You can have one without the other, but it's not as rich or as fun. Growing up, these ideals took root in the everyday living on my uncle's dairy farms. The first time I was stepped on by one of the 3/4-ton cows clearly demonstrated that the theory about how to convince an animal to move in the way you want it was far different than the practice. Planting, harvesting, and tending to the landscape depended on the weather as much as the knowledge and ingenuity of the laborer. While building and remodeling homes to pay for college, I frequently witnessed arguments between two foremen, who happened to be relatives, about the best way to support a cantilevered floor or to bring two roof angles together in an aesthetically pleasing yet functional fashion. This life learning illustrated how the best laid plans change for a project as soon as the activity begins. The system gives feedback and teaches if I listen. I try to model listening to the system as a teacher-scholar, and it is reflected in my work in the local and global environmental issues, the leading of interdisciplinary efforts, and the use of scientific data in decision-making as part of civic life. I invite students to become multidimensional problem solvers and to learn as much as they can about the systems and the stakeholders. While working on a local trout stream, the team converses with volunteers, elected officials, agricultural practitioners, and landowners about their concern as well as their past and present experience with the landscape. It always yields insights into forces that have shaped the ecosystems that we inhabit, as well as teaches us about our common humanity. By reflecting on environmentally focused volunteer work and other work experiences, I and my fellow learners received more than any textbook or constructed class experience could provide. A few excerpts read, "I didn't realize the amount of interest and concern the community had about the environment. There are people who share my values. People listened and understood what I said. Working and conversing with strangers is scary and fun. I have made new friends. I was amazed by the amount of work we accomplished in so little time." While theory provides a wonderful guide, it is the experiment, the action, and the practice that allows us to grow, to construct knowledge, and to create and to foster relationships. Practice reveals that meaningful work comes in a variety of forms. It makes visible our natural and social connections while inviting one to explore and even live to one's values. Ultimately, we discover that we are all in this together, and that we give to our neighbor and to our own education by learning through practice. As a result of this, I would slightly modify my opening statement to say that I believe theory guides, experiment, and practice decides.